What's good, YouTube? I'm back with another video. Today I want to talk to y'all about barber school. A lot of people want to know how to get started and things like that. We want to talk about barber school today. Now keep in mind, every state is different. Every state has different requirements you got to go through. Every state has different things the barber license allows you to do. Now, I'm from Iowa. I went to school in Washington, and then I did some school in Iowa. Now, I just want to talk to y'all about what school is like for me. I'm sure everybody got a different experience and things like that. This is my experience in what I went through in school. I went to school in Washington State in 2015. In Washington, they only require, or at the time, they only required 1,100 hours. I went part-time. A lot of schools usually do full-time. The school I went to, you could do part-time or you could do full-time. I had a family, I got a wife and kids, so I decided to go part-time and work full-time. It was real convenient for me because I could still work and pay bills and stuff like that. Now, a lot of schools that are only full-time, you can only go to school. You can get a part-time job, but there's not many jobs that work with that schedule, with the school schedule you'll have. I started school. It was cool at first. They start you off with scissors first. You gotta learn how to use scissors first. At first I thought this is dumb, stuff like that, but it actually helps you in the long run. When you're doing comb overs and stuff like that, those scissors, it's gonna be worth it. It's definitely something you want to learn so that you don't know how to just cut one kind of hair. So you don't just know how to use clippers, you can use scissors as well. The school out there, it was cool, but there were no barber instructors. So it was a little bit harder for us. I feel like if there was a barber instructor, we would, honestly, a lot of people would be more interested in learning from a barber instructor rather than a cosmetologist or, something like that. The school was cool. It wasn't too long, 1,100 hours. I got through it part-time in a year. I know people were getting through it like 7, 8 months full-time. It doesn't take long at all to become a barber. There was a side for barbers, and then there was a larger side for cosmetologists. In the back, they had the estheticians. With barber school, you're gonna go through a lot of different emotions. You're gonna go through a lot of different feelings. Sometimes you're gonna like your teacher, sometimes you're gonna hate your teacher. The teacher you like and or hate sometimes changes throughout the year. You have to take what you think you'll use from each instructor that you have, keep that, and then just, the rest you'll learn over time. Now, barber school is only to teach you how to pass the test. That's it. Everything else that you're gonna learn, either YouTube, go to a barber shop after school and try to pick some things up, or, however you want to do it. A lot of haircuts people are doing now, you're going to learn outside of barber school. You're going to learn way more outside of barber school. Barber school is just to teach you the basics and how to get past the test. When I was in barber school in Washington, the only people we really had coming in to the school were old people. So we were just practicing on old people. I don't think I cut a single black head in the school, unless I cut my brother's hair, that's it. I had to bring people in, but I had just moved to Washington, so it was hard to really get clients to come in. I didn't know anybody. A lot of these guys went to school in this area, so it was like, oh yeah, I'll bring my friends from school, they'll let me cut their hair. I'll bring this person, I'll bring that person, they'll let me cut their hair. For me, it was like, I literally had to just thug it out, and I had to just go through all these old people's haircuts. That was it, I had to cut straight old people because I didn't know too many people there. The few people that I did know, I ended up cutting. That helped me a lot, but it wasn't enough practice for me, in my opinion. So what I did, everybody in my family is a barber. My mom, my dad, my sister, and my brother are all barbers. I went after school when I didn't have to work and watched my brother cut over at the complex in Pasco, Washington. I watched Abel, I watched Bert, I watched my brother Cedric. They all were cutting, and I would literally go up there, ask them what tools they were using. I would ask them, how do you transition this? How do you take this line out? How do you do this? And they would teach me. I learned the basics at school. I learned everything else that I would be doing after barber school from them. And then, as you go along your journey, you pick up more and more things from people you work with or barbers you see online and things like that. You learn different things, but barber school is only to get you to the test and pass the test. That's it. Now, when I was in barber school, I was afraid of the written test. I was afraid of the written test because I hated tests. I hated school. I never liked school, which is probably why I became a barber. I started barber school when I went to Washington because I was like, everybody else in my family is a barber. So I'm just gonna do that and maybe I'll end up liking it. And I ended up liking it, but I grew up around it. So it's like I knew some things, or I thought I knew more than I did, but I knew a little bit of stuff. Not a whole lot, but I didn't cut my first head until I got to school. I was afraid of the test because I never did good in tests in school. What I did, I would ask the teacher, if I wasn't doing anything, I would ask the teacher, can I get a practice test? She would go down the practice test after I finished and mark the ones that were wrong, and mark the ones that were right. What that did, I practiced the ones that I got wrong. I practiced everything I didn't know to where when it was time for the test, I passed it the first time. I didn't have to do it more than one time. It was easy for me. I remembered everything because of those practice tests, and that kept me going. That was one of the biggest things that helped me get through barber school, because I wasn't sitting there just sitting around wasting my time and stuff like that. A year is not a long time to learn. So you got to make sure you're doing extra work on top of what they're teaching you. And with school, you know, you're gonna miss some time, stuff like that. With financial aid, in Washington, they didn't have financial aid to where I could take out a personal loan for my expenses at home so that while I'm at school, I don't have to worry about those bills. And that was a struggle for me. That is why I had to work. So I absolutely had to work. I didn't have a choice. And then the haircut test you do on a mannequin in Washington. It was easy because, I mean, you can't really mess up a mannequin. The only thing is sometimes they change the test and the instructions aren't the clearest. And that is the messed up part about it. Sometimes you can go in there and it's like, oh, they just changed the test. I don't know what to do, you know, so make sure you listen to those instructions when you're doing your test. Some of the people in barber school, you know, you're gonna be friends with forever. Some of the people in barber school are gonna be your closest friends. They're gonna be damn near like family sometimes. Like I met a lot of people in barber school that I still talk to right now. You know, we kind of grow together and it makes the journey a lot easier for you. I became a barber. Fast forward to 2018, I moved back to Iowa. Iowa's requirements are 2100. I tried to transfer my license. They said, you can transfer your license, but you have to take a test. I have to do a practical and a written. I'm not worried about a written test at that point. I was more worried about their practical test. Their practical test, you have to do a perm. And I believe you have to color the hair. Now in Washington, barbers are not allowed to use any chemicals. In Iowa is 2100 hours because there are chemicals that you have to learn how to use. Now, when you're a barber out there, you don't have to color hair while you're working in the shop and stuff like that. You can just do haircuts. But to be a barber, to get a barber license, you have to learn the color and the perm. What I decided to do, I told them I will go back to school and start off from 1100 hours and do 1000 more hours, which obviously costs more money, but I was not prepared to take a test on something I didn't know about, and I wasn't gonna do it. I went back to school. The school out there was different. You come out of barber school a lot more advanced than the barbers in Washington, and that is one thing I learned. They actually have a barber school. It's not for cosmetologists and barber. No, there's a cosmetology school and there's a barber school. And I went to strictly barber school and it was completely different. I actually liked school in Iowa a lot more. It was a lot more relaxed. In Washington, it's like, oh, make sure you're always doing something. Make sure you're always doing something. In Iowa, if you don't have a haircut, you can go watch other people cut. You can watch YouTube. You can just chill if you want to. You can literally do whatever you want if you don't have a haircut. Just make sure you're there for your haircut. In Iowa, there were a lot younger kids. There were, you know, black people, white people, Hispanic people. So you're cutting different textures of hair. And it was a lot of stuff like that. And people were coming back. The barber school was in a college town. So those college kids need a haircut. So they would go to the barber school because it's so much cheaper than actually going to a barber shop. You know, sometimes if you get a good barber, then you're good. Why not pay less for someone in school? The only thing is, when that barber graduates, then you're out of luck. Either you gotta follow them wherever they go, or you gotta go find the next good barber at that school. So I went back to school. It was a lot different. I had to drive every day like 45 minutes to the next town to get to school. And then once we got to school, there were people that I knew that were already at school because that's where I'm from. I'm from Iowa. And it was easier to get someone to come to the school because I actually knew a lot of people. So barber school in Iowa, they gave me a lot of tools to succeed. Also, when you get out of barber school, the time between graduating and taking your test, they give you a permit. You can work in the shop while you're waiting to take your test. If you take your test and you end up failing, you still have a permit, you can still work in the shop. I think that lasts like a year and then it'll expire. So you wanna make sure you take your test, you wanna make sure you get scheduled for your test and take your test by then. Now, I never ended up graduating there because Iowa is not a place that I wanted to live, raise my kids or anything like that. Moving back, I looked at it like I'm gonna raise my kids around my family. It's gonna be cheaper to live. I'm gonna be able to make more money. My wife's gonna make more money. At the end of the day, just because a place is cheaper and your family is there is not a reason to stay somewhere. I felt like I was settling. I felt like I wasn't growing anymore because that's where it all started. That's where I grew up. That's where I was raised. That's where I was born. That's where I went to school. There was nothing else there for me. I ended up moving back to Washington before I even graduated from barber school in Iowa. And I went back to cutting hair in Washington. In Iowa, all you need to cut hair is a barber license. In Washington, you need a salon shop license. You need insurance. You need a business license just for you, and you need your barber license. And a lot of barbers don't know that. Like, a lot of people don't even have, they only have a barber license. And that was me for a while. We stayed there, we ended up coming to visit Arizona. Arizona's hours required to be a barber is 1,600. But the governor passed something to where, because of how long I was cutting, they just transferred my license. I just had to pay a fee. I have been cutting since 2017 licensed. I think that has something to do with why they transferred my license. And it was a lot easier. I was prepared to take a test here. I don't think barbers can use chemicals out here from what I understand. So they just transferred my license and everything worked out. I just went straight to cutting. All in all, you're gonna struggle. It's gonna be stressful. Take it day by day, one step at a time, and you'll get through it. But understand that you will not be the greatest barber right away. You have to put your time in. The longer you cut, the better you get. Every barber goes through a stage where they're bad and then they're good again. You kind of go up and down, up and down. It's just what it is. Nobody's perfect. I have some days where I'm not as confident, and then I have some days where I'm like confident as hell. So, you have your days, but just make sure you put in your time. You gotta be patient with your process. Don't compare your process to someone else's process. If you can't cut fast, that's fine. I think I cut 40 minutes ahead, sometimes 45, but I don't rush it. Everybody else is doing 30-minute cuts in the shop. I'm not doing 30-minute cuts. That's just something I don't do. Don't compare your style to someone else's style. Don't compare yourself to other people. Everybody has their own stuff they have to go through to get where they want to be. And it's a long journey. So just put your time in, be patient with your process, and you'll get better every single day. Just take it one step at a time. There are also a lot of things that, barber school is not gonna teach you about. They're not gonna teach you about taxes. They're not gonna teach you about how to manage your money, stuff like that. So make sure you get information, whatever information you can from barbers around you, barbers you look up to, stuff like that. Don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of barbers are very helpful. And the way that I operate my business is because of other people that I watched throughout my journey. And, I've seen how they manage their money, how they work. A lot of stuff comes from other barbers. So make sure you ask those questions. Barber school is hard to get through sometimes. Just make sure you're motivated enough to get through it. I know a lot of people who have barber license that aren't even cutting hair, and it sucks. You go to school, you spend all that money, and you're not cutting hair. But that's just what it is. If you want to be a barber, this is just something you have to do. You can't, there's no way around it. You don't want to be a barber out here with no license, because it sucks having to look over your shoulder every day. Oh, it's a state board coming in. You know what I mean? That's all I got for this video. If you found value in this video, like, subscribe, comment, let me know what kind of videos y'all want to see. I got a lot of people commenting and stuff. Make sure you let me know what you want to see. Everybody who's been commenting, you guys have gave me knowledge, honestly, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Keep commenting, keep subscribing, liking the videos. I appreciate y'all. See y'all in the next one. Peace.